Vegas Video Network Studios, just steps from the Las Vegas Strip. It's Top of the Food Chain. And now your host, he's 1 part Mohawk, 2 parts attitude, and a touch of what the It's Al Mancini.
Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Top of the Food Chain. And as they said, I am Al Mancini, the guy who has figured out how to turn eating, drinking, getting fat and buzzed into a career. So it ain't a bad way to make a living if you can do it. And we're here, of course, at the Vegas Video Network. Yes, the home of seven incredible shows. This one, of course, being my favorite and Scott's favorite because I often bring him booze during it. But I'm not the only one, of course. I realize that fact, but definitely a reason that he likes me, the reason he keeps me around. Anyway, a lot of good shows, though. I encourage you guys to check out VegasVideoNetwork.com and check out all their great programming. All of the shows, this one included, are archived there. You can also get them on iTunes, and you can listen to them every Friday night at 1400 a.m. That's KSHP, I believe. So we're every Friday night there. So tune in, and you don't get to see the food, and you don't get to see the booze, but you can at least hear what we're like when we're eating and drinking them. So that's cool. In the meantime, we love to take emails from people. If you have a question that you want us to ask on a future show, email it to us at food@vegasvideonetwork.com, right down there. And we got a live chat going on every week. That is happening right now, so get in the chat room, log in, and shoot any questions you've got for my guests, who will be up momentarily. As you can see, we've got a lot of great food here in front of us. We're going to be talking oysters in a little while. Before that, we've got Chef Vic Vegas back from Food Network Star. So loved having him here so much last week that he graciously agreed to come back. So that's all up in just a few minutes. First, though, I got to talk to Scott. Scott, what's going on, my brother?
You are what's going on. By the way, congratulations on the 20-year anniversary of your marriage.
Yeah, we had a great day the other day. My wife and I celebrated our 20-year anniversary, renewed our vows, went out to Marché Bacchus, one of my favorite restaurants here in town, had a little lakeside ceremony. They've got a great new chef over there, by the way, and I highly recommend you go check him out, formerly of Alex Strada's restaurant, which is sadly no longer with us. So that was cool. Then I drove some friends back over to Mandalay, hung out at Floor by Hubert Keller, where they plied me after a few hours of wine with a few shots and some more great food, and then hit a strip club and did some more shots. And then I think I met you at Rerod at some point, Scott. We went in there, and I remember a little bit of the evening from that point on, and then we had a nice little after party at Seville Row. So yeah, it was great. It
was the best tour of Reraw I could have asked for, was you giving it to me.
Me giving it to you with a lot of booze in it,
was outstanding.
Right?
It was outstanding.
It was a fun night, and of course Seville Row was great too. I know you hung out there a little bit after I left, because eventually I just had to go home and get a little bit of rest for
Yeah, it
the
was
night.
great. You had a good time.
But it was cool. Also got a lot of other things going on. I'll plug them more at the end of the show, but I did just launch a new website, almancini.net, and we've got another over there. I've got another video series happening. It's a little different than what I do here. I take some of my punk rock friends, some musicians, some porn stars, take them into some fine restaurants and teach them about food. So it's kind of like me times guests that are exactly like me invading fine dining restaurants, and we're calling it Dining Invasion. So you could get that at almancini.net. In the meantime, it is time to get kicking with today's show, Top of the Food Chain, where I also interview very, very cool people. I just don't have quite as many celebrities. Today I do, though. We've got Vic Vegas, and he is a celebrity, and he will be up momentarily right after this message.
Hi, this is Scott Pritchard from Let's Bet. You're watching the Vegas Video Network. It's Vegas Video Network, not .com. You're not using this one, right? Don't you dare use this one.
And we are back with a man who needs no introduction, especially if you watch Food Network Star, Vic Vegas, an old friend. Vic's back in the studio with us again for the second week, and hopefully he's going to be here to fill us in on behind the scenes of Food Network Star as often as possible. Vic, you got to fill half of America in this week because there was some kind of snafu with anyone who tried to DVR it.
I know.
And I didn't see the end. I missed the last half hour. I got home, put it on, and I didn't get to see the end. A lot of people didn't get to see the end out there in America. So first things first, who got sent packing?
I don't know. I didn't get to see the end. No, I got to tell you, it was unfortunate. Sometimes mistakes happen, but it was a little sad for me because I had a really good week this week. You know what I mean? And
you could tell us you had a good week whether you did or not because nobody saw it.
Right, exactly.
So I don't know whether I'm trusting you here.
Oh, thanks, Al. No, I got to tell you, this week we lost Justin B.
Justin B, that's the Harry Potter looking dude, right?
No, that's Justin D. Justin B is the more sophisticated, tatted up
okay, guy.
Very knowledgeable in food,
Right, and lousy on TV. I mean, probably one of the best chefs on the show, honestly. But from what you could see at home, he looked like a really talented, super talented
very talented
chef.
individual, very educational.
And just kind of sucked every time you put him on camera. That is what the... Well, they didn't send him home for being the best.
He's the critic. He's the critic. He's allowed to say that. Justin is a fellow competitor of mine and a friend of mine. But, I
just say they didn't send him home for being the best. That's not the way that show operates.
He had a rough week. The stakes are really high. I mean, Cougar Town, Paula Deen. I mean, it doesn't get any more stress out than that.
Yeah, it was very cool. You guys seemed a little stressful. I want to talk, of course, I always want to talk about the conflicts on the show.
Of course.
Because you've got Penny and Mary Beth, who, have they come to blows yet? Because I was just waiting for somebody to pick up a frying pan and just smack somebody in the face.
It was really close last week, As we were filming, I thought it was going to happen, but... I give the girls this. They did put their head down and they did try to come up with a product because, it's Cougar Town. You know what I mean? And that's one of the most watched shows in this country. And, the girls are really stoked about it. And for the most part, they put their differences to the side. There was a lot of loving, hugging, and kissing going on.
A lot of the most sickeningly phony hugging and kissing that I have ever seen. That's the thing. If two guys don't like each other and they have to work on a team, they don't hide that they don't like each other. They don't fake it. But these two chicks are just like, oh, I love you. I'm so happy to be working with you. And, then you cut to them when they're by themselves saying, I hate her and I want her dead.
What a coincidence, too. I'm serious. As everybody was picking, as soon as we saw that, we were like, oh, my God, no.
And then you also had Chris, who's the resident nut job, frat boy, whatever his scene is.
Oh, man, Chris, yeah.
Yeah, who also, you kind of want to smack, but for a different reason. And Chris got stuck with, not stuck, but Chris got placed with Orchid, who is a very demure young lady. And I thought the funniest thing, if you've been watching, this guy Chris. I mean, he's chasing a raccoon around with a broom this week. And I mean, he's just nuts. He seriously reminds me of any frat boy that I hated in college.
Sounds like a show, to be honest,
Yeah, definitely.
He could be the guy going around to the frat houses and
frat boy in the kitchen. That should be his concept. But he was with Orchid, and I thought it was funny. She was like such a little mom. She had to give him like a little timeout word.
Right.
They had like a little safe word. It
was a perfect combination. It was the total opposites attract type deal, and she did. She kept him in line.
Yeah, it was like she treated him like he was a preschooler.
Code blue. Code blue. Kept him in line. Did you see her? She hit him with a code blue and he just stopped?
Yeah.
Now that's some serious business right there. The Orkinator, man.
Yeah, that was funny. We got somebody on the chat line. Scott,
cool.
What's going on?
We do. Nate wants to know, do you get a chance to interact with a celebrity guest after the show has been shot?
I got to tell you, and that is a very good question because I used to be curious about that before I went on the show. We actually interact with during as it's going on. Pretty much when it's a wrap, it's a wrap. I mean, these are very busy people that, pretty much have a lot of stuff they have to go do. I mean, these are stars of the Food Network, and they're all over the place, So they got to do their thing, and then they got to move on to their next.
That's kind of a bummer for me because I was hoping now that you knew Paula Deen. My last time my parents went through Savannah, I tried to call some of my chef friends and see if they could get my parents in there because she doesn't take reservations apparently. People just line up to go to her restaurant. So I was calling around to my chef buddies, and nobody could really help my parents out. So I thought maybe now that you were tight with Paula. Next time they're in Savannah.
I felt good. I blushed. Paula, they didn't show it on camera because there's so much to edit, but Paula told me I was cute, and I was like, I was starstruck. That was really the first time I got starstruck on the show because she's like everybody's mom.
Yeah.
And she's a phenomenal individual. But yeah, there are times that we did get to see, the stars a little bit afterwards, but we're doing 20-hour days, and when it's a wrap, it's a wrap. That's it. Everybody's tired from cooking their buns off.
Right. Now, I wanted to ask you a couple quick questions. First of all, you got vegetarian that you had to make with Jill.
Yes, Mr. Heartclogger himself got vegetarian.
Yeah, yes, the man who has clogged my arteries more than any other chef I know. You got vegetarian, but and it looked really good, and obviously you got a lot of compliments for it. But here's what I thought was a little odd. You and Jill were making vegetarian food, and almost no protein whatsoever in it. That's my general complaint about people that cook vegetarian and don't put protein. Did you, since I didn't see the last half hour, did anybody mention that fact?
Actually, no. You know, they let me be on this one, I think, because maybe they were happy that I was plating food this time around. But
it's always a good thing with you if you can actually get food.
Bobby Flay gave me the best advice. He's like, when you're making something, go back to the roots. Take what you normally would do and kind of fit it into, you know, how it's needed. So I took a traditional dish, changed a few ingredients, and you know, Courtney Cox loved it.
Yeah.
You know, so
I thought you might get in a little trouble, seriously, because that is my complaint when I eat vegetarian. When people, and there was a little bit of hummus in Jill's dish, and I mean, you used some nuts, so yeah, I guess you had a little protein there.
There was a lot of pistachio in there.
Yeah, so you get a little something, but generally a complaint of mine. So okay, nobody else. I would have given you crap for that if I was on the show, man. So
I bet you would.
That's why they don't let me judge those things.
Yeah, you never know, man.
I've got another question, and I'm sure a lot of people out there have it. When you have to go to these places to shop, first of all, it doesn't seem like quite as much a product placement for the store. I don't know if it is or if they're endorsing you, how much you can tell me, but it seemed like they just didn't have a lot of what people needed in that store.
That's part of the challenge. They did that because they want to put you in an environment and they want to see how far out of the box you'll go. Like, the worst thing they could do is have everything there that we need. You know what I mean? They want to see, like Jeff, like look what Jeff did. He took tofu and made it one of the greatest dishes of the night.
Yeah,
you know,
but still, it seemed really odd. He could find no ground meat whatsoever in a giant supermarket. I mean, first of all, if I were him, he did a great job and ended up making. And I love it when people are able to make tofu good and not try to hide it and pretend it's something else. But couldn't he have just bought like chicken and ground it up in the kitchen if he had wanted to?
You know, in the matter of time, with the amount of people we had to cook for and like the amount of time we had to shop and cook, it's almost like you normally wouldn't do it the way you would normally do it. You know. Normally you have time to plan it out and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but it's more like a grab and go. The clock is ticking, and I've already set the example that you do not want to not plate food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think I might have helped everyone out by experiencing that for them.
You're the cautionary tale on that one.
That's right, man.
Also wanted to ask you a bit about Bobby Flay, what it's like working with Bobby. I've met Bobby not a few times, and he's always been extraordinarily gracious with me. Really, really nice guy. I've heard from people that he can be a little moody, but I've never experienced that. How was he dealing with you guys?
You know, I think when they say he's moody, they might be mistaken that for being a perfectionist, because he's done so much in his career that, like, if it's not done right, he don't like it. And I mean, he's become the man he is today for going through this to almost become perfect, because he really is, man. He's one of the kings of the food world.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I love Bobby. Last time I was in New York, I dined at Mesa, which is around the corner from my old apartment when I lived in Manhattan. But I'd never dined there before, and actually got the chance to go in there and didn't know when I made the reservation, but Bobby was in the house, and he was kind enough to come out to the table and say hi and send us out some dishes.
Dude,
and
that's how he is, man.
Great, man.
You know, once he has that little twinkle in his eye for you, he really respects you, and he really shows it. Definitely learned a lot from him.
Well, Bobby, I think, has to like me, because in my book, which I've been plugging, Eating Las Vegas, the 50 Essential Restaurants, and I got a copy for you.
Oh, yeah.
You just got to promise to tweet all your followers and tell them how great it is if you like it.
Deal.
But in this book, I actually nominate Mesa Grill Las Vegas for inclusion, and my co-author, John Curtis, who hates Bobby and doesn't get along very well, he vetoed it in the veto section, which is one of the more fun parts of this book. So Bobby kind of, because he and John don't get along so well, Bobby, I guess, likes me more by default. So he's always been really gracious.
I don't know, you're a pretty likable guy. You know what I mean, even though you're mean to me sometimes, I still love you.
I'm not as mean to you as some of those judges have been.
I know, man.
I've never been that mean to you. Well, look, I'm hoping you can come back.
I am going to come back.
As many weeks as possible.
Yes.
What is up? We got two pieces of advice. We got a teaser, but one piece of advice. If you're TiVoing it or DVRing it next week, okay, just DVR whatever comes on after it, too. So just in case they screw it up again.
My highest recommendation on it, because you never know, technical difficulties, it always happens. Just record it for 2-3 hours. You got more Food Network on there, worst case scenario.
Right.
And it's at night, and they show some really awesome shows at night.
And I think it was Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives that came on after it. I'm not sure. That's what
Triple
one of my
D,
buddies told
man.
me. So,
Great show.
So you make sure at least you get to see the whole thing. Also, with your DVR, make sure you now know it is called Food Network Starred. It's not called Next Food Network Star.
Right.
They sort of changed the title. I don't know why. Maybe we'll get into that in a future week.
Yeah, I'll explain that one to you. They kind of wanted to put a little bit of an edge on it, and I think they're standing up to their word, because this is different than any other regular season I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. We're going to be right back with oysters in just a minute. Vic's got the book, and Vic is probably going to stick around because we may do some drinking after the show as usual.
All right, yeah. I got LAJ with me, Chef LAJ. He's got my back, and we're definitely going to hang out with you guys for a little bit. So I'll be here. I'm going to be reading the book and seeing what's good to eat.
All right, and then you can trash me afterwards, man.
Sure,
Thanks
why
a lot.
not?
Here we go.
Love
We
you.
got a message. We'll be right back.
Let me know when I'm live. Hi, everybody. This is Bridget Magnus of Getting Real Estate in Vegas, and you are watching the Vegas Video Network.
And we are back here at the Vegas Video Network with Top of the Food Chain. I am your host, Al Mancini, and joining me for this segment, we've got Chef Jose Navarro. Any relation to Dave Navarro?
No.
No?
I use it whenever I make reservations at restaurants.
You say that?
No.
Yeah, Chef Navarro from d.vino in the Monte Carlo, and we are here to talk oysters today. And you know, I've chatted about oysters in some other articles and other videos I've done, but what I really want to do today that's a little different is talk about oysters for the home cook and enjoying them at home. Because you know, anybody can go into a restaurant and order great oysters, and if it's a good restaurant like d.vino, of course they're going to have a good time. But these things can be a lot of fun to cook at home, and that's what we're going to concentrate on specifically today. The first thing I want to address is the big old wives' tale, myth, rule of thumb, whatever you want to call it. It says you only eat oysters in a month with the letter R in it, which means you don't eat oysters in the summer. Pretty much. If you go through your little calendar with the R's, it'll turn out it's May, June, July, and August are when you're not supposed to. I'd heard a lot of rumors about this over the years. One used to be that the water's too warm, it's bacterial. That, I understand, is completely false. Correct. Another one is it's their mating season or spawning season or however it is oysters reproduce. I've never seen oyster porn, so I have no idea how that happens.
You're not alone. I haven't either.
Okay. If anybody out there has, any of my porn star friends have any oyster porn out there, I'd be curious.
Yes,
But
send that way. I'd like to see it as well. Well, you know, that's actually not true. Just like everything else, like food, you know, there's always different items in season, but oysters are in season year round. It's just you have to look at different oysters from either coast, but they're in season year round. Actually, one of the ones that we have right here, Malpec, just came back into season after being out for I believe it was about 3 weeks.
Okay, so do not worry what time of year. As long as you're going to a good supplier, as long as you're going to a good restaurant, you're going to be getting good oysters. And take that, John Curtis, my co-author, who says he doesn't like them because they're spawning, and he says, like the rest of us during mating season, they get fat and flabby. So, but no, you can really get some good stuff all year round.
For sure.
Cool. What else did we want to chat about? Well, the first rule of thumb you need to know about oysters is there are really only 4 or 5 genetic species of oysters.
Correct.
But there are about 1 billion types of oysters that you're going to find out there, and that they're named after the water that they come from because they basically just filter water all day, and water gives them most of their taste. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. Well, like I said, you know, this one's right here. We have our Malpec. These are from the East Coast, and then we have Hamahamas from the West Coast. So I wanted to bring a little bit of both to show. And sure, these are from the Malpec Island. And
so we're going to hold one of these up. Scott, can we get the Malpecs here? A little smaller here. Pretty little oyster.
Yep.
Nice mother of pearl, little green lip around there. And then we've got the Hamahamas.
correct, right here. This little guy's right here. Well, actually, a little bigger guy.
Yeah,
right here.
bigger, got a nice little kind of like shell thing on there. I don't know how much people can see that, but it's just like a layer. It goes down almost like a flight of stairs, it looks like, sort of.
For sure.
So really, again, very pretty oyster. Okay, rule number 1 when you're dining oysters at home, right?
Correct.
Got to know how to open these babies.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
They'll do it for you in the Whole Foods, but the longer an oyster sits there, it gets watery.
Yeah, it gets watery, and you also lose a lot of the liquor from the oyster, so you lose a lot of the flavor, a lot of the yumminess from it. So yeah, the best way to do it is actually to do it yourself.
Shuck them at home, okay?
Correct.
Shuck it, people, shuck it. Trying to do that without cutting your finger off can be difficult, so I'm going to have you give us a little demonstration.
For sure. I left my hammer and my screwdriver at home, so no, I'm just playing.
Well, you've got one of these nice oyster shucking devices
Correct.
there, right?
For sure, yeah.
So, which is the easiest one to start with?
Honestly, once you've been doing it for a while, one is just as easy as the other. Some of the smaller ones, like Kumoros, Kumais, Kushis, all those tend to be a little bit trickier. Not so much because they're harder, but because the shell tends to be a little bit brittle. So they'll break down a lot more once you get into them. If you're not good, because you have to be gentle with them. But for the most part, I mean, one is just as good as the other. I mean, we can start with the Malpex and then move over to the Kumamoto's if you like.
Well, if you start with the harder one, and then I'm going to try the easier one.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So here we go. Got the Kumamoto.
For me, I like to kind of make a little pillow for them.
Do you need me to move that, Scott? Does that make life easier?
So we'll move this one as well. So.
Okay, so you tuck them away in their little pillow.
Yeah, I figure if you're going to put them out of this misery, they might as well be comfortable, right? And then we're going to get in the back end of them. There's kind of, it's almost like the instructions are there for you. So you kind of get it in there and wiggle it around a little bit.
So you're poking in the back where the joint is?
Correct. And what you want to do is you want to kind of break it. And then once you got that, the trick is to kind of pull your knife up to the roof of the oyster so that you can, and you'll feel it when you get the membrane on the top, and you loosen it up from the shell up top.
Okay.
And it'll come out clean.
Now you again have to separate the
For sure,
meat
the meat from the bottom. So what you do is you kind of just and it's good to go.
And there you go. And then you suck that bad boy down.
Correct.
Oh, may I?
Please.
It is messy for me to eat these babies with a beard like this. I'll tell you. I will go home reeking of the ocean, but happily so.
For sure.
Okay, so it is a little counterintuitive. That's something I wouldn't have guessed if I hadn't had Chef tell me. I would almost think, because if this is the way the guy opens his little mouth, this is where he opens. I would think, you kind of go in his mouth and pry your way down, but you're actually starting with the joint, with the toughest part. So we're going to see if I could do this. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because the last time I shucked an oyster, it took me 20 minutes to get one oyster shucked. So hopefully with a little bit of your help, got this baby down there. Mm-hmm. Okay, am I picking the right spot on him?
Yep. All you have to. It's almost kind of easier if you set it down and put some weight on it.
Okay.
And then just to get in there and try to. You're gonna. It sounds weird to say, but you're gonna find the spot that you feel where the knife is going in, and then you'll go in from there. And I heard a little snap, so you might be getting there.
I feel like I'm just
digging in there.
Yeah. How long does it take people normally to get the hang of this?
Well, for me, it was one of those things that I kind of walked into a job where I had to open them, and I'd say easily it took me a good month and a half before I got really good at it.
Okay. So, yeah, I almost cut my hand off, and I took off a little bit of the oyster. People, seriously, it can be done, and I've done them at home, and the first one took me about 20 minutes, so I'm not going to waste everybody's time. I was really hoping to be able to impress people because I've done it before. But another good piece of advice, because I really do like them when you shuck them fresh, is if you're going to go, say, to Whole Foods, you're going to order a dozen oysters, have them shuck the first 8 of them for you and take 4 of them home and try that because it's going to take you a little while. But seriously, when you're able to taste the difference between the ones that you cracked open yourself, and it takes a little bit of practice, but you'll definitely get the hang of it. So, okay, I wasn't able to prove how great I am at oyster shucking, but shuck it. Let's move on. Let's talk about how people serve oysters and the best things that you're going to want to, best types of sauces and things like that for oysters. A lot of basics. I mean, some things I like to do is if you can get some fresh caviar, it's a nice way to adorn them, but that's a little pricey. So let's talk about simple, not quite as expensive things.
Well, one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best ways to eat them. I mean, it's in their natural state. Just kind of like you ate them. You really get to taste every single one of them differently. But something really simple to do, it's to add a little bit of lemon juice. I've seen people do that, and while that's good, it still kind of differs a little bit from the flavor of it. Another way to do it, it's with either mignonette or a little bit of horseradish. They tend to bring out different flavors within the oyster as well. Okay,
and we were going to have you mix up a mignonette.
Correct.
We'd have to get a mixing bowl though for that, don't we?
Yep.
Can somebody run over there and grab a mixing bowl? In the meantime, something that I'll tell you guys is that oysters, if you're into environmentalism and you're worried about sustainable seafood, things of that nature, oysters are probably one of the most environmentally friendly foods that you can eat, especially of seafoods. They basically act like filters for the ocean, and places where there are oyster beds tend to have the healthiest waters. Very healthy place for the other fish. So by growing oysters and farming oysters, not only are people supplying us with great food, but it's also very, very good for the environment.
For sure, definitely.
Okay, so mignonette.
All right,
This sounds fancy. It sounds French. It's going to impress your friends. Is it French?
It is.
is.
It's the traditional sauce for oysters, and it's very difficult to do. I wouldn't try this at home unless you have been doing this for a long time. So, but do take notes. It's what we have here. It's the most traditional one. It's
You wouldn't try this at home.
Oh, I would not. It's very, very difficult. I don't think most people out there can do it.
Yeah.
And you'll see what I mean.
Sarcasm works well.
Yeah. So what we have here is we have a little bit of red wine vinegar.
Red wine vinegar.
And you can buy those in one of those in any grocery store actually.
You guys can get it in bottles. You don't have to have it in the nice
nice Tupperware. No,
nice classy Tupperware.
Yeah, this is for transportation purposes, correct?
Right.
And then shallots.
And shallots, of course, we got right here. We can show people. If you're not familiar with shallots, this would be a shallot, and it's kind of in the garlicky and oniony family, right?
It's a hybrid in between both of them, the garlic and the shallot, and I mean the garlic and the onion, and the flavor is mild, a little bit sweet. It goes very well with a lot of things, and then mignonette being one of them.
Right.
So I'm gonna steal a spoon from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you dice up those shallots in any food processor. You peel them and dice them up in a food processor.
Well, I would never do shallots in a food processor.
Okay.
They tend to get a little bit bitter. So it's flavor that you don't want. So you're better off doing it with a very, very sharp knife, as few runs as possible through the blade. So you try to get them right the first time around. It takes a little bit of time, but I find that it gives you a better tasting shallot.
Okay, so we've got our red wine vinegar. You're going to put in a little bit of shallot. Is there a specific ratio that you have to worry about?
It all depends on how much you like them. I usually go about. For 1 cup of vinegar, I do about 1 tablespoon of shallots.
Okay.
That's my.
They just so aromatic. You open that up.
Yes. And then there's one more ingredient, and it's pepper.
Very difficult ingredient to find.
Very difficult ingredient to find. But I brought a little pepper milk. I like my pepper cracked, ground fresh. So that's why we do it that way. And that again it's a matter of taste. But I usually go about four turns for 1 cup, and then we mix it all up real quick.
Mm-hmm. And then if you pop open another one of those oysters,
you're gonna check.
Are you one of those guys that can do like a half dozen oysters in a minute, like some of those people that I see?
Well, this one's gonna be a little bit difficult because we already lost the.
Because I broke it.
Well, I didn't want to put it that way. It was a defective one to begin with.
Yeah, bad oyster.
Yeah. So.
I've been trying to find for a while the man who tracked down the phrase, "He was a brave man who first ate an oyster." It's been attributed to quite a few people over the years, including Mark Twain, but even further back than that. And you got to say, you look at these little rock things that have basically a piece of mucus inside of them when you break open the rock, and you definitely have to wonder who was the first guy that thought about eating these.
That's one of those questions that, it's funny, but it's one of those things that I've always thought about. That one and hollandaise. Hollandaise sauce has been another one that I've always kind of wondered. Who sat there and whipped up eggs?
Okay, so like we said, we whipped up this mignonette sauce, classic French sauce, in all of about a minute.
Yep.
And you could do that at home. Chopping the shallots is about going to be the only thing.
Yep.
You just spoon a little bit of that baby on there. Little shell.
Apologize.
Excellent, though. Absolutely love mignonette. Other popular, excuse me, not supposed to talk with my mouth full. Other popular ways to eat oyster, of course, is just with something very simple like Tabasco. You have the little hotel-size versions, but you can get regular-size versions in your grocery store. And then we also, of course, people love to do it with cocktail sauce.
Correct.
Can you show us real quick how to whip up
for sure.
cocktail
That
sauce
was actually at home. One of the easier ways to make cocktail sauce is just a little bit of ketchup, horseradish, and Tabasco as well. I like to do mine a little bit different, a little bit of lemon juice as well. I want to steal the other spoon from you. I do about 2 to 1 on the ketchup.
Okay.
So we do 2 ketchups. 1 chili sauce, and these are all items that, like you said, you can find at the.
So some chili sauce, then a little horseradish,
Steal the fork from me.
and
Hey, Al, if you're a first-time oyster eater, what would you recommend as the accompanied goo there?
The accompanying goo. I recommend you don't call it goo, Scott. But actually, I really think the best way to really get to enjoy an oyster at first is just to take a lemon, cut a lemon, squeeze a little lemon into it. But when you're trying to impress your friends at a little cocktail party, especially if you can't shuck them all that well the first time, it's nice to whip up a few of these sauces. So here's a basic cocktail sauce.
Very basic, very straightforward.
And that's pretty much straightforward. You have a few other sauces you were going to just talk about and run them down for me.
Sure.
And I know you brought them out here and very quickly.
Well, one of the things that I like to do, I like freshness with oysters, with seafood, with anything. So I make what I call a Bloody Mary mignonette. I mean, it's definitely not a mignonette, but it has a lot of the ingredients. It has a little bit of horseradish, fine diced tomatoes, a little bit of shallots as well, some cilantro, and then I hit it with a little bit of vodka, mix it all up, let it marinate, let it marry, and then you put it on top of the oysters. It's very tasty.
And that's why we've got the vodka here.
Correct.
And quickly, I just want to run through a couple of ways to easily make oysters if you're going to cook them as well.
Correct.
Because some people are still a little freaked out by eating raw oysters.
For sure, I understand.
So cooking them up, classic preparations, oysters Rockefeller.
Oysters Rockefeller. With oysters Rockefeller, it's very easy to do, actually. The way I like to do them, I like to poach them in butter. The oysters, shuck them all up, open them up, poach them in butter, and then you make, traditionally use watercress. A lot of people are using spinach, a little bit of pernod, so you saute a little bit of onions, a little bit of shallots, and the spinach, hit it with some pernod, salt, pepper, a little bit of cream, let that reduce, add some breadcrumbs to that, top the oysters with it, and then just brown them real quick. Watch it. In the kitchen, you do it in the salamander, and your oven at home, you would have to do it in your broiler.
Other things you can fry up, of course, fry up oysters. You shuck them, you take this stuff
And
out.
then
What do you just coat it up with?
Whatever your particular drenching flour is. At d.vino, what we use a seasoned flour that we do with a little bit of curry and orange juice. Orange zest, lemon zest, so forth and so on, salt, pepper.
Okay. Places to get oysters here in Las Vegas. Great place, of course, d.vino, obviously.
For sure.
Also
definitely.
love Morels. They always have a great variety.
They do.
Rick Moonan's RM Seafood, great place for oysters. If you want cooked oysters, one of my favorite places also to get them is over at Lola's downtown. I don't know if you've been there in the Wholesome Bread Factory.
I have not. But
and she does Cajun cooking, or Creole cooking, I should say, actually, probably cross between the two, but closer to Creole. But she does oysters on her grill. She just brushes them with a little garlic butter, and, they're absolutely amazing.
Gotta try it.
So, yes, indeed. Scott, how are we running on time right now?
I think we're about ready to take any questions that you might have. Do you have any?
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Actually, just a couple more things, basically. Is there an oyster that you recommend for a beginner who's not used to eating raw oysters? Is there, do you think people are going to have an easier time with the tiny little Kumamotos or with a really large East Coast oyster?
I think for most people the entry should be the smaller ones, just because they're easier to digest. To put in your mouth and swallow them, and also their flavor tends to be a little bit milder, a little bit buttery. If you want to make the transition into something a little bit more briny, then I think Malpecs are great. Again, they're not as strong as some other oysters out there.
But what you should be looking for in oysters, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really the taste of the sea.
For sure.
It should
Definitely.
taste like the ocean.
Definitely.
Because it is primarily what you're really eating is the water. These things just take water in and they squirt water out all day long. And that's what you should always be looking for in an oyster, is the taste of the sea.
And it should be very clean.
Yeah, very clean. People worry about the health risks, and I can't go into your restaurant, I'm sure, and see raw oysters on the menu without the little asterisk that says it could cause a potential danger. How seriously should people be worried about that?
Well, I think if you guys are purchasing your oysters, if you're getting your oysters from a trusted purveyor, you really shouldn't. Because it's one of those things where, I know all the restaurants I've ever worked in, this is one of those items since it's served raw, and like you said, you're looking for a clean, fresh flavor. It's an item that we rotate very, very often. It's not an item that we mess around with. It's not an item that we take any risks with. And I know that's a general consensus.
Right.
If it's an item that is not consumed within a short allotted period of time, then we get rid of it. We get new ones in. I'm pretty sure the supermarkets that are selling them are taking the same approach to this product. So I really don't think it's a big concern any more so than consuming mayonnaise per se.
And also, if people are shopping out at a supermarket, I would highly recommend looking for a little tag that says Safe Harbor. A lot of people in town now have been using Safe Harbor, which does seafood testing and tests for a lot of contaminants. And and as long as you're seeing their seal of approval, you're pretty much safe, I'd say, definitely. And as long as you've got a great chef who knows where they're getting them and is checking the tags and where they're what waters they're coming out of.
And a lot of the oysters nowadays are also coming, with the tag that says not a Gulf oyster because of all the problems that we had in the Gulf and all that
Right.
stuff. So.
Scott, we have a question there.
Nate wants to know, do you prefer a particular oyster from a particular location? I mean, since I guess the water affects their taste, is there one type of oyster that you like more than another?
It depends on what the preparation is for them. If we're going to fry them, I like plumpier oysters, so I would go with the hama-hamas. But just to enjoy them by themselves, I always like the smaller ones, the kumamotos, the kushis, the kumais, oysters that have a clean flavor to them. My personal favorite by far has to be the Malbec.
And kumamotos, actually, I've spoken to people about this before. Kumamotos have been around for a while. Very, very tiny Asian oysters. You get them out of Asia. Great. But you just mentioned kushi. Kushi oysters seem to me that over the past 2 years, I'm seeing them everywhere. Mm-hmm. Genetically, they look almost identical to kumamotos.
Yes.
But they're farmed in Canada, I believe, right? And yeah, seriously, for the hipster factor, everybody's very into kushis these days.
Yeah.
You could probably get kumamotos maybe for less because they're not as hip right now. Yeah. Pretty much the same oyster, but different waters, and they're going to taste a little differently.
The taste that I found in kumamotos, they're a little bit more buttery, where kushis tend to be a little bit more briny of an oyster. But I mean, like I said, they're both good representation. They're both good oysters.
Okay, Vic, what do you make oyster? How do you like to make oysters over there?
I'm not a raw oyster kind of guy. I'm more of the oyster Rockefeller kind of dude. I like them cooked.
Really?
Or fried, yeah. Oh yeah, that's the way I do it.
Oh, well, yeah, fried, gee. Vic Vegas making something fried. Hard to believe.
Hard to believe, right?
Health food nut that he is. Fried food from Vic. Of course. Well, look, I want to thank you so much for coming down and chatting with us about oysters today. I want to thank Vic for coming down again. Vic, did I ask you what are we expecting? What are we looking forward to on the next episode of the show?
Oh, I got to tell you, we're going to have a nice 4th of July bash. It's going to be quite interesting. Guy Fieri in the house. This is one that a lot of people have been waiting for, and it's going to be a very interesting twist to this episode by far.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank both of my guests for coming down here. I want to remind you, check out my website. It's almancini.net. Dining Invasion is the name of my new video series that you can check out there. Like I said, we got rock stars, we got porn stars, we got punk rockers, we got tattoo artists, we got all kinds of stuff going on there. Again, d.vino, great place to go when you want oysters. My book, once again, got to pitch the book, Eating Las Vegas, the 50 Essential Restaurants. Scott's going crazy over there. I've got no idea what he's doing. Okay, on that note, we've got some... we spoke about alcohol, and I guess we might have a little bit with it. What do you recommend to drink with oysters?
Well, the general consensus is always to go with a bubbly, champagne, or in this case, we brought up Prosecco. Those go great, but I mean, opening oysters is a task for me. It's opening champagne, without breaking something in the house because the cork went flying out. So another thing that I always the stouts are good beers to go with oysters. But again, going in the whole convenience package kind of deal. Newcastle's it's in my opinion one of those beers that is kind of in between. I mean, it's definitely not a stout, but the flavors kind of go there. So that's why I brought that. So basically you eat what you like with them. But beer is also a good thing to go with oysters.
Yeah, beer and oysters, people. Things do not get really better than that. Yep. Especially if it's in the summertime. Nothing like hanging out and just
fry them up and drink them with a lager.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank everybody for watching. We will be back next week. I'm not sure if Vic will be here. He's got a busy schedule, but we're going to try to get him back next week. He's still busy reading. He looks like a little librarian over there, man. It's kind of funny. A very scary librarian. But anyway, that has been Top of the Food Chain. I am Al Mancini, and I will see you next week.